Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Nueva Mentality. Today I'm with Julio Garcia, a 20-year veteran of the Army. Today we dive into his Army career, his experiences. I hope you guys enjoy the topic, and I hope you guys enjoy this episode. Thank you for watching.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Julio Garcia. I've been 21 years of service. Within that, I've done a little bit of artillery and logistics. And logistics was the end of my career. I was an ammunition specialist. I was also NCOIC, which is a non-commissioned officer, a sergeant, for all of theater north of Iraq. So I did a lot of distribution from there to the whole country of Iraq, Kuwait. I was also personal security detail. Plenty of experience, especially in the logistics world, because I was part of the BSB, the Battalion Support Battalion, which is close to mirrors a corporation in the logistics world. We have a lot of logisticians, supply, a lot of parts, ammunition, all that correlates, and also do imports and exports within the within the military. So it kind of mirrored a lot of the corporation, especially from the company that me used to work for. Mm-hmm. I could tell you that there is a lot of mirroring from each other. For instance, when you do containers, right? We do containers, put shipments in containers, put them on boats. That includes equipment, food, supply. Right. So it mirrors a lot as import exports in the logistics world. Same concept, just a little bit different because one's run by the federal government, the other one is not, of course. And then also that we do deal with foreign entities. For instance, there was a time where we had to send troops in the Pacific because we have I was part of the 25th Infantry Division, and we had to do a lot of throughout the whole Pacific, send people to Thailand or anywhere where there was like a
I just want to point out, Julio has been he was in the Army for 20 years, so he's about to give us a lot of insight into 20 years of service. He's been in active duty 20 years with 3 deployments. Telling you, thank you for showing up. This means a lot. Going all the way back to young Julio. Just your decision-making process to choose Army over the other branches.
Well, one of the reasons why I even joined the military was to get out of my situation. So like most people join the military because either they want to go to college, they want to do something other than be in the same situation in a neighborhood that they just want to escape, or be somewhere, try something new out of high school. Being in the military is one of the best decisions I've ever made, because it's the only one that I know, getting out of high school, that you get the respect as if you were a doctor, a lawyer, or a police officer. Because if you go to get out of high school, the first thing you think of, let me get a job. And most people get a fast food job or something like that, unless they go to college.
Right.
So, and college is very expensive. Experienced me to the whole world. So as a young person, I was like, hey, maybe I should try something different and get out of my situation, and maybe I should see the world. And it all paid for me. At the end, it definitely paid for me. But the young person myself, it brought a seed of, there's something better than just being in the same situation. So that it also makes you appreciate your country that you're in. I know one of the big things is like it's the service part. I wanted to give back to my community, not just be another number. It's just like I want to say thank you to my country by serving my country.
Okay.
So that's called the MLRS, which is a multi-launch rocket system of shooting rockets downrange. And they show you a video and you're just like, oh, I want to do that. Kind of this to get an experience, use it for. I was not planning to do 20 years. I don't think anybody that ends up doing 20 years plans to do 20 years.
Oh, okay.
Most of the people that plan to do 20 years ends up doing 4 or 5. But
I guess I wanted to hear a little bit about your boot camp story.
that's fine. I went to boot camp in October 1999.
Okay.
This is post 9/11. So this is before 9/11. So this is right when we were just coming off of Bosnia. So there was not a lot of world direct conflict out there in the world. A couple of years before 9/11. Just saw that this is an avenue for me, and I didn't see it as a wartime. And I know a lot of people, when they join basic training, that's what we call boot camp in the Army. Boot camp is Marines. Basic training is for the Army.
Right.
Is they either hear about their uncles, about their experience, or they saw a movie from like Full Metal Jacket.
Full Metal Jacket.
And they see that drill sergeant.
After boot camp, where did you go to boot camp?
I went to basic in Fort Jackson, South Carolina.
And from Fort Jackson, where did you do your advanced individual training?
I did it in Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Because
My first MOS was a 13 Mike, which is a MLRS, multi-launch rocket system. Remember? My job did in shooting rockets or ATAC guns. That was a 13 Mike, which is it's the rockets that you can shoot from here to Austin without no problems.
oh, okay.
If you want a reference of it, he's currently using it for the Ukraine-Russia war, where they're literally in Russia with no problems. Soldiers from the Ukrainian army are trained to use MLRS, but because we have other countries that also use that weapon system.
Those missiles can cause some damage.
Yes.
Did you use those during deployment?
I did not, because of lateral damage that would have caused. During the Iraq War, it was suggested to use that during the Battle of Fallujah, but during that time they decided not to because of the collateral damage. It destroys what we call a grid square. It would destroy a whole neighborhood within seconds.
Yeah. I mean, that sounds like
literally a whole block.
Missouri, Fort Sill, Oklahoma. So after Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where was your first duty station?
Actually, Fort Sill. I ended up staying in Fort Sill. During that time, I experienced my first duty station. It was during 9/11. That's when 9/11 hit. So around that time, my first duty station, I was almost on the verge of thinking of getting out. A little bit of background also was I made my E5 within 2 years, in 4 months. I was from private to sergeant within 4 months. So I was speeding up the process. It's called a red cycle detail, which is a detail that the Army uses for like a cycle. So we have red, amber, like if it's ready for deployment. Those were the terms that were used. And red cycle detail is they put you on details like funeral details, which I was part of, or clean the post or something like that. So it's one of those, and I was doing funeral details at that time.
Wow. Yeah.
And when 9/11 hit during that time, I became from just doing funeral details to QRF, quick reaction force. Quick. It was really, really eye-opening to see the Army in a panic mode because we had no idea that.
So whenever 2001 hit, because we didn't go into Iraq until 2003.
2003 we went to Iraq. Prior to that, we had gone to Afghanistan. So after 9/11 hit, their dad asked for volunteers, and I did try to volunteer to go overseas. The first time that troops were on the ground was in Afghanistan. Special forces, they went out there and they were doing that and slowly sending troops to Afghanistan, and until 2003 that we went to Iraq for the WMD, weapons of mass destruction.
Right. So were you part of the first wave?
No, I was part of the second wave.
Second wave.
Oh. After the initial Iraq push, and we, of course, were able to defeat the Iraqi army quick, came the guerrilla warfare, which is the terrorists from other
rebel groups.
Not just the rebel groups, but this was groups from the outside of Iraq coming into. You had a lot of the Muslim extremists coming into that country to fight. That's when the Iraqi Al-Qaeda or other factions of the terrorist organization.
Right.
So it was pretty much chaos because you never knew who was with you and against you. So it's not like a traditional enemy where you're wearing a uniform. You know he's the enemy, and they know that you're their enemy. It was like there's a guy in a uniform and there's a guy in civilian that's trying to kill you. So you have no idea who's really.
So in 2003, whenever you found out you were deploying to Iraq for the first time, where were you at and how did you find out? How did you get the news?
Okay, so I was in Station Fort Hood, which is Fort Cavazos. And when we got the news, we were going to deploy with the first wave. Unfortunately, we didn't deploy. Fortunate or unfortunate. We got trained to go overseas already, like, okay, we're going overseas. But had we deployed, the town of Helene, Copper's Cove, and the other places within the area would have dried up the business because we were a big installation. There's over 190,000 people just in Fort Hood.
Right, yeah, Fort Hood, that's a big base. That's one of the biggest bases in the...
it's considered one of the biggest bases
in the United States. Yeah, and how many soldiers did you say were around that base?
There were over 190,000.
What was the name of that unit that you were in Fort Hood?
So I was attached to the 1st Cavalry Division, the headquarters of the division, and I went to the Bardi Division Artillery.
Okay, so the horse, that's 1st Cavalry.
Yes.
And that's the big one out of Fort Hood.
It's one of the big ones. So at that time, it was 1st Cavalry Division and 4th ID. 4th Infantry Division, which ended up moving to Colorado.
Okay.
Before that, we get kind of like an alert order says you're going to go, and a lot of people got stop loss, something that doesn't happen anymore, which is you're going to this unit, nope, not, or you're retiring or stuff like this. Is where they stop movement, stop loss, and they keep you for the numbers to deploy you. That's one of the first indicators that you might.
What was the Army like during that time? You know, there's a lot of uncertainty amongst soldiers. Is that right?
Yes. So when the war kicked in, we had no idea what was going to happen. And then when the President Bush said mission accomplished on the back thing, we didn't know if that was it. We thought it was going to be like the Gulf War, game over, come home. And that didn't happen. We ended up being from a fighting force to a stabilizing force, which is like to keep the populace, like stable too, so they could start building their country.
Okay. The culture of the Army, it because of the type of war that we were in. I know whenever I joined, it was 2007, so that means the war had been going on for for 5 years or so. So whenever I went through boot camp, the culture was Iraq war. That was the tone and the way that they were training us. Like, we did mock trainings of urban warfare, clearing rooms, a lot of background music with the Muslim music in the background. They really try to make us feel like we were there. So over time, I guess you being pre-Iraq war, going into the Iraq war, did you visually and feel the culture changing in the Army, like because of the style of warfare we were in?
So post 9/11, our whole focus was big invasion, like either Iraq, Russia, whatever. We still had that mentality of a big invasion. After 9/11, after Afghanistan, after Iraq, we had an urban warfare.
Right.
So we were now going house to house fighting, which we were trained to. It was like, okay, we're big army takes, the other army, game over. Now it's big army stabilized, and now we have to fight these insurgencies.
Right.
You tell who's your foe by the uniform. Well, when certain elements are wearing certain, regular clothes, is he a foe or a friend, an ally? Well, you don't know. And some of them were wearing their uniform with the green bandana with the Arabic writing, black clothing to symbolize they're part of Al Qaeda, or that's different.
Right.
Somebody in civilian roles, and also that we were also getting hit with.
And that's a product of guerrilla warfare when you don't know where the enemy is.
Correct. And then we were getting hit with a lot of IEDs, BBIDs, and stuff like that. Hit and run tactics where you get shot and then they would just leave, or get pot shots and leave. I don't remember the amount, but it was maybe 20,000 troops.
You were part of 20,000 troops. Wow.
So it was a quick, here you go, they because the whole division left. So you're looking at the division level. And then because troops are already over there, so you're multiplying, you're adding to 20,000 plus whatever's there that's rotating. So it's a constant rotation.
Right, constant rotation, new units coming in and relieving the other units.
Correct.
So what was your job there in Iraq?
The first time?
And what was your rank?
First time, my rank was E5. And my job, funny enough, I started with one job and I ended up with another. Prior to me deploying, I was part of a vehicle called the C2V, Command Control Vehicle. And they were using me as an experiment to see if we could move fast during combat, because in order for the commander to get a view of his operation, he has his headquarters, but we were the mobile headquarters, so that way he could see the front lines for himself without any danger and still have contact information, because we were literally a tactical operations center within a vehicle, while he could relay message to the big talk of what's going on in the battlefield. And so I just happened to be doing that, but the war again had already gone, the initial part, so they didn't really need that job for me. So I ended up being selected for personal security detail, which is a PSD, a bodyguard for the brigade commander.
Okay.
So our brigade commander, Colonel Lanza, who's now a retired general. My job was to, at all times, protect them. I was a gunner.
So what kind of vehicle were you driving around in?
At that time was a Humvee.
Oh, okay.
A regular 3-seat Humvee.
No doors?
We had soft side doors in the beginning, which we ended up getting up armored side doors, which saved my life, saved my body part.
Oh, okay. So where were you? Were you driving him to and from?
No, I was not the driver. I was the gunner.
The gunner, okay.
So I was outside the vehicle pretty much. I could oversee the whole land of Iraq.
So just to put it into perspective, a gunner is you're on top of the hood of the vehicle and you're holding the machine gun.
Correct.
Okay.
That's correct. My job was to protect. I was the main gun to protect our convoy. There was three of us all together. Reason why, because you're driving and you can't pull out your M16 or your M4 versus a machine gun that's already outside.
Right.
The life expectancy of a gunner in Iraq was probably you were a high risk. You're probably looking at maybe 15, 16 minutes if you got hit. IED, BDID, whatever. Versus the ones inside because they were more protected.
So during this war, we lost a lot of gunners.
A lot of gunners, a lot of IEDs, BDIDs. They also had tripwires on top, so you could be driving and it was like a piano wire, and if you're driving 60 miles per hour, you're the gunner. That piano wire is going to turn it off. So I had some of those experiences. The scenario was we were driving and it was a dark night. Those who've been to Iraq know that lights are not always constant. So we had the light on one side, and all of a sudden it would go off, and then light on this neighborhood, and then go off, and stuff like that. So we just happened to be on the dark side. And sometimes you can't tell because it's so dark what's in front of you. And, we were driving, and somehow the wire, as soon as I turned around, I saw a flashing light, and one of our gunners got caught in that piano wire, and it threw the 240 up in the air.
The weapon.
A machine gun. And it threw up in the air, and we stopped our vehicle, did 360 perimeter, had to get the weapon.
So you had to circle back? Is that?
Kind of back out, circle back, grab the weapon, and take off. And we literally saw the wire on the ground because it cut it. Because what happened was his gun was like this, so it just cut it just right.
Oh.
Like had he pointed this way, he would have got his.
So the weapon saved him.
Prior to having shields too, so we didn't have so you had the 249 and the 240. You have the shields.
Oh, the shields, yeah.
So we didn't have the shields.
Wow, that was the wild, wild west. It really was. And so that's another thing that I noticed, like over the years, if you look at old documentaries of Iraq, you notice that the vehicles were getting upgraded throughout the years.
Correct. So now I believe they have the MRAPs, the bomber vehicles. Prior to that, we had the Humvees with, it looked like the Mad Max. Some people would have, they took the soft shells and literally weld the metal doors because the soft shells, bullets go through there like nothing, like butter. So we did a lot of things to prevent us from getting really seriously hurt, to include putting sandbags on the floor because, we wanted to protect from the ground because sometimes we were getting hit with the IEDs from the ground up. Sometimes it would work, sometimes it wouldn't. When you're dealing with 500-pound bombs, it doesn't matter how many sandbags you got. We try to do everything we could to save our lives.
So y'all were improvising with what you had, like with the tools that you just kind of had on hand. It wasn't the best kind of safety features, but you had to improvise.
Yeah. And then, of course, as soon as our TTP would change, so would the enemies. So they would know exactly how we would do routines, and they would change their routines to counter our routine. And so you go back and forth.
So they were watching from afar.
Constantly watching us, constantly monitoring what we were doing, how we were doing it, to the point that they knew us as much as we knew the enemy, as far as thinking. Because, you get your briefings, trying to find out what's out there, what they're thinking.
So throughout the course of a deployment, like let's just say for an example, a soldier who comes into the deployment in the beginning, compared to the soldier after the deployment, do they become pretty sharp war fighters by the time the deployment is over?
Experience. So in the beginning, I didn't know how to do most of the stuff. By the end, I became an expert.
Right.
And then you start getting senses. So you get a sixth sense, like a spider sense of danger at all times. And you're looking, to this day, I still look around to make sure I don't have because it becomes draining. So somebody coming in to that environment, that's somebody that's already an expert, you just try to give them the best advice that you can, because you're going to experience stuff that you experience, and then they're going to experience stuff that he's going to have to translate to the other guy that's coming in. So it's kind of hard to give them my experience, be like, oh, here you go, and then tell them how this is what you got to do, and then expect them to know it.
Yeah, because you can't give anybody that sense. You have to go through it, I feel,
Yes.
to develop that sixth sense.
I used to, for the first time you're excited and all this. After that, it was like, okay, now I've experienced it. I could tell you, you can read about it and you can experience it, but until you actually experience it, you're never gonna. You have to go through it.
Right. And that's the kind of thing that makes me think about my time in the military. There's something about in the Army, when you deploy, you get the honor of wearing a patch under your flag. So there was a culture where soldiers wanted that patch.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So if you saw, like for instance, that patch. So the patch is a badge, almost like a badge of honor. Because when they see that combat patch, that means you've already went and that's your experience. And people will listen to you, even if you were not the greatest soldier in the world, but because you have that patch, it's like, okay, you've been through it. And then you would get officers who are, higher than you that don't have that patch, and they don't have to fight that respect.
Yes.
So a lot of these officers would be like, yeah, I want to go, just because they want to have that respect, because they know that the guy with that private with a patch has more pull with the soldiers than the officer who's a captain with no patch.
Yeah. So that was also a interesting time in the military, but that's probably always been around, even back to maybe Vietnam War veterans and everything.
Yeah, because I remember when I was a private, I would see these Gulf War veterans. So, prior to Iraq and Afghanistan was the Gulf War, and you would see these guys with patches, and they were a rare thing by then because the war had been done like 9-10 years.
Right.
So you would see these guys with patches and be like, okay, well, they know what they're doing because they've been through the war, and stuff like that. And then once you go through it, you're like, okay, now they're looking at me the same way I look at now.
Right. Yeah. A new era of soldiers. That conversation, I think I was real intrigued by the first deployment because I guess I'm trying to wrap my head around young Julio soldier and your mentality going in, and that was also a new war to the U.S. I think back then the Army was wearing the tan camis. So every time I see a photo of a Army soldier wearing the tan uniforms, that's a certain era of a soldier that you were a part of. I saw a photo of you on Instagram where you're standing where the two swords.
Yes.
What is that place called?
I don't recall what the name. It's where Saddam Hussein had a parade.
Saddam Hussein had parades. So
if you ever see those famous photos of him shooting a shotgun and the guys are going through the parade, that's where he did a lot of performative speeches and stuff.
Okay.
Basically, final review for the Iraqi army.
Because that's a famous photo spot for a lot of soldiers. So
the swords, the cross saber swords that you see there are Saddam's hands. Okay, and it was supposed to indicate during the Iraq-Iran War, the 8 years, I think it was 8.
What was that called again?
The Iraq-Iran War.
Oh no! What were those hands?
The Saddam Hussein hands, the cross sabers.
That's what they were called.
They were called cross
sabers.
Yeah. So there were 4 of them. There's 2 on the ones that you see behind there, and then there's 2 on the other side. So on each side of the parade field.
Okay. And was that area? I mean, I see a lot of soldiers taking photos there. Was that area dangerous?
Yes, it was part of the. It was dangerous because it's part of the green zone. So those that were in the military know the green zone. So it was safe, but not too safe because you still get mortars and stuff like that. It was a hotbed, especially around 2004, 2005, for mortar, rocket fires, and stuff like that.
Okay. Could you tell us about a time, I don't know, just an interesting story that you experienced in Iraq as far as close encounters, with the roadside bomb. I know those were big in 2005.
Yeah, so there were plenty of those. I did experience that a lot. I experienced one that did hurt me a lot.
What kind of vehicle were you in?
I was in a Humvee, so when you're getting exploded by an IED, you'll feel the concussion. It's almost like somebody punches you in the, even though the shrapnel doesn't hit you, the concussion, which is the explosion part, does hit you, and you can feel it because it hits you like somebody punching. Even with the protective gear that you have on, you still feel the plates. It still feels like somebody punches you right in the chest, and it takes the air out of you, and it makes your brain kind of like, it shakes your head.
Okay.
So you still get exposed with that, especially because I was a gunner. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So I got to see that. I felt that, and I still get the effects from that.
Right.
I did get several IEDs, and matter of fact, there was a BVID incident that did happen nearby where I saw the explosion.
Could you explain a little bit what a BVID is?
A BVID is a car bomb.
Car bomb.
So the car bomb was set on the side of the road, and it exploded, and it almost took me out along with some of my team members. I did see some casualties, but
American soldiers.
Some American casualty soldiers, but they were not that severe. That were going to be life threatening. Did see more casualties from the civilian side than the soldier side.
Oh, from the civilian side more than the soldier side.
Yeah.
And that's something else that I don't know if many are aware of, but the amount of casualties that Iraqis experienced was probably a very high number.
Yes, I did see a lot. There's an incident that happened. It's in the Associated Press during that time, 2004, where they were doing a presentation for a water. It was a water pump for the region, for that particular region, and there was they were trying to, it was they were going to try to cut, ribbon and stuff like that, and there was a whole bunch of kids. And 3 did explode, which was car bombs. Okay, so, and it killed, according to the Associated Press, about 30 to 40, which I got to witness. So 40 kids.
It happened right in front of your vision.
So there were a lot of casualties, mass cow, and that has a profound effect on you. I think I could take care. I could see the bodies of grown people, but to see kids, that affect me a lot.
Right.
And it's, to this day, it still affects me.
Yeah, I don't know. When I hear you tell the story, it's I can't really think of words to say because I think I'm still trying to process the visual. I imagine it was an intense, chaotic scene. Probably, maybe you had a lot of testosterone, a lot of emotions that were probably just so much feelings.
You do get a lot of those feelings, but then they become numb. So you get a numb sensation to the point where, for many people, it might be like, oh wow, that's what happened. But to me, it was like a Tuesday or a Monday. You still get the effect until you don't really get to experience the effects until you come home.
Right.
So you start analyzing and you start like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And then that's when the sadness really takes in, and the depression, and you start drinking more and stuff like that.
Right. It's interesting that you say that because right now here at home, this is normal. This is normal life. But when you were in Iraq, the war that was normal because that was war. It was normalized to you, and I'm assuming that's part of the reason why you get numb because it's normal.
Yes.
So
a lot of things, most veterans will get when they deploy, they get a numb sensation, and it's not because they don't feel for the human being, but it's a survival mode.
Right.
So you're already in that survival fight or flight. So you're either going to dwell on it and drown yourself at that moment, or you're gonna just move on, and you end up moving on just for survival purposes. So once you come home and everything's what's called the norm for everybody else except for you, it takes a big effect and a toll on.
Right. And that sounds like a whole nother topic for a whole nother video, talking about veterans and the help that veterans can get. Sometimes whenever I talk to veterans, I feel like we have a different approach or mentality coming into normal life. I think the way we approach our corporate jobs is different. The way that we approach our family is different. Our intentions whenever we speak to people, it just seems intense.
Yeah. So a lot of things, being veterans, the transition from veteran to civilian already. So that it's a hard process for a lot of them, especially somebody who's been there for a longer time than, like, if you're a short timer, do 1 to 4 years, your transition to civilian life is not as bad as somebody like who's been more than 4 or 5 years, because you have lived a life that is different than everybody else's
for a long period of time. That's a big portion of your life.
Yes. So you end up, a lot of your terminology becomes military.
Yeah.
So you have to translate that. A lot of the way you see things are different. The fact that as a veteran, you see a lot of veterans wear like their military outfits or whatever, just because it's like it's the last thing that you can have, that you belong to that life.
Right. Yeah. Because there's little things that can bring up reminders, but because there were some tough times in the military, but I think there was also a lot of fun times.
Oh yeah.
So
don't get this gloomy thing that the military is nothing but doom and gloom.
Yeah. Right.
And the thing is, and why you build bonds with people from the military is because it's fun. There is a lot of times that there is fun, and you went through some stuff together, and you end up being part of the team, and you start like, hey, I was stationed here, and have the same common, even though, let's say, somebody from a different era still has the same feelings as somebody from today, because they have the same common bond, but as far as human nature of being in the same kind of environment, even though it was a different environment. Like, for instance, somebody from basic training could relate somebody from Vietnam's basic training, because you had the drill sergeant, you had this, so you end up with this experience,
right?
A shared experience that civilian world doesn't have, because we're 1% of the population.
Right.
So try to explain that to everybody else. Well, we are 1% of the nation. Like, if you get all the veterans, we're 1% of everybody, and try to replicate that to the civilian side is very hard.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you're if you don't come from a family of like a military history, that's another element. Yeah. I think there are some families where like their grandpa, their dad, like their uncles did it, but yeah, and I think you learn so much and you grow so much there that when you get out, you kind of carry the same mannerisms and mentality. I think we lighten up a little bit, but like that element is still always there. When you were in Iraq, what's coming to my mind is all those shops that would pop up and some of the things that they would sell us.
Okay.
Could you tell me about some of the stuff that you were able to buy over there from the vendors?
You're able to buy all kinds of stuff. Okay, so there was a market and a black market. Let's say you wanted to buy movies. You had what's called, and forgive me for the derogatory term, but it's the Haji shops.
Right.
So you would have these Haji shops, and they would sell CDs from movies that were coming in, some that were old, and stuff like that, because they're trying to make money, trying to get out everything. At the same time, let's say you wanted alcohol. right? Because that's a scarce commodity for the military.
Oh,
You know, because we were given General Order Number 1, and you can't violate General Order Number 1, which is like the general saying you can't have this. So a lot of people would be in the black market for it. I didn't know that many, but I know that there was out there.
so there was some way that you could get access to those things.
Correct.
Okay, so some soldiers were having parties when they head back to the.
Correct.
Okay.
And some people were buying illegal substance, you know, or some were manufacturing their illegal substance.
Wow.
So it was very eye-opening to see stuff like that, but it happened.
Right. It's underground markets, even for the soldiers in wartime. When you say these underground markets, it's just they would kind of talk to the vendors and they get to know them. And
Correct. It'd be like, hey, you know, so just like networking. You know, like, hey, you know, how you doing and stuff like that, and 2 or 3 more shops. You know, like, hey, I need this. You know, I don't know how I can get it, but I know somebody's uncle that can get it for me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, can you get it for me? And then you'd have somebody get it for me.
Right. So, you know, I think, there was some type of internal thing there was some kind of internal thing that soldiers kept to themselves. I remember my time, there was some soldiers that were able to get some alcohol mailed to them, and it was like in a bag, and they put it in a DVD player case. I don't know, they would find different ways to do those things, but I also think that maybe soldiers were trying to cope and find ways.
Well, there was, like I said, back to the numbing, there was a lot of ways to numb yourself, and soldiers are gonna find ways to numb themselves. It's just the way it is to cope with fight or flight.
Right.
And it's hard because you're seeing things that you're not supposed to see.
Yeah. Right.
It's hard to explain what war is to somebody who's never experienced it.
I mean, soldier, and you were seeing a lot of chaos and a lot of violent things, but you kept pushing. Is that like something that the military, kind of ingrained in you, is just keep moving?
Yeah. So back to basic training, right? So what it teaches you in basic training from the get-go is, you get this mentality that I can't do it, I cannot do it, and then you push yourself, and the military pushes you to do it. And once you do it, you're like, oh wow, I can do it. So what else can I do? That's what happens in the military a lot. Is that mentality that's already ingrained in you since day one. Again, foundation, build it to the soldier that they want you to be.
Right.
So you end up being resilient.
Yeah.
So that has a lot to do with it. Like, resilient to bounce back and say, okay, I can do this.
Right. Yeah. I can see that. To kind of wrap it up, a question I wanted to ask you is, for any young person that wants to join the military, what kind of advice would you give them, knowing what you know now?
Some of the advice that I could give any soldier is, first of all, the Army or military is not for everybody. It really isn't. It's a hard life, because it's almost you get institutionalized within the military. Especially if you have kids, if you get married, it's tough on the family because you're always constantly leaving, right? So you could have marital problems down the line. If you're thinking of doing it because, like myself, I wanted to get out of my environment and try something new, I would definitely recommend the military. It's got loads of benefits. Free Medicare, free, if you get hurt, you got a doctor right there. You get sick, the common cold, you go to a clinic, so it's got a lot of benefits just for, life insurance. You got all these benefits, GI Bill, I could start throwing benefits after benefits after benefits.
Yeah. VA home loan.
VA home benefits for joining the military, even if it's a short term. You don't have to do long term. Even if it's the short term, you still got some benefits that's coming to you for the short term. If you do it for the long term, there's way more benefits for the long term.
Right. So, for example, what's the benefit of staying in 20 years?
20 years, well, for one, I get a retirement check. Okay, so that's a guaranteed retirement check. versus, if you work for a corporation, there is no guarantee that you're gonna, unless your 401k is up to date, or even if you have 401k,
Right.
right? So if you don't have 401k, you're not gonna get a retirement. You're just gonna have to suck it up.
Right.
So that's one of the benefits.
And you can continue working
Yes.
even after retirement.
After retirement, you can continue working. It doesn't say that you can't. It just says that you're retired.
Wow. Yeah. Well, 20 years of service. That's awesome.
But back to what I would tell a soldier is, the military's not for everybody. If you don't think that that's going to be the life that you want somebody, because the Army job is the easiest job that you can have, because they tell you where to be, you dress whenever you want, whenever you need, or whenever they tell you, and then you get time off a lot, federal holidays. I mean, you have to work from time to time, 24-hour shifts, whatever, and go to missions or training and stuff like that. But it's manageable. It's not nothing that could concern anybody. Yes, there is time that we end up going to war, but that's just one of the things that happens with the job. It's just one of those things that happen. But if you want something different, you want to explore the world, if you want benefits, if you want a stable life, maybe you're an 18-year-old kid not ready to go to college. It gives you time to think. It's like, hey, do I really want to go to college or not? Or, maybe this is a path for y'all. It's because it's hard for an 18-year-old to decide, okay, I'm going to college, and then say, oh, I don't want to go to college after all, because not college is for everybody either.
Right.
So, and there's, do you want to work for Burger King, or do you want to work for a service that not also are you working for your benefits, but you're serving your community.
Right. Yeah.
There's not a lot of jobs that I could think of off the top of my head that there's probably there is, but not that on top of my head.
Yeah. And paid training.
And not also that, you become part of the brotherhood.
Yeah.
So there, veteran community is a brotherhood. You could try some organization like the VFW. That's a brotherhood. The American Legion, the DAV, which is the Disabled American Veterans. There's a lot of organizations that become a part of the brotherhood. Let me not talk about the Marines, because that's a whole different brotherhood.
Yeah.
Once a Marine, always a Marine.
Yeah, shout out to the Marines. Yeah.
Or the SOF community, which is a special operation. That's a different community.
Right.
There's plenty
the subcultures of the military.
Subcultures of the community, but it's still part of the brotherhood,
right.
The umbrella, and sisterhood, by the way.
The sisterhood too. Yep.
Because females are an integral part of the military. They are. I serve with a lot of females, and even in combat roles, I would depend on them more than some of the males.
Yeah.
So especially the ones that have that alpha male, like I've seen some of those same guys that talk like they're the alpha males under a Humvee because they're scared.
Yeah.
And I've seen the females like, no, I'm ready to take action. So,
right. Sometimes that training kicks in, doesn't it?
Correct.
Wow.
And the reason why we train is it's muscle memory. You I already know what to do. I get scared for a few seconds, but now I know what to do. Let's go do it.
Right. So now that you're out of the military, what do you do to stay mentally sharp, to stay in the military we had to wake up early, do PT, and we had to do things throughout the day. Like how do you find your purpose now?
Well, like everybody else, you have to find your own way. Okay, the purpose for me is my kids, my family, some of the things that are Army values, obviously. Sometimes to teach, mentor, sometimes that kicks in also when I see someone young that needs some mentorship. Give yourself a purpose. Always try to get a purpose in life, because if you don't get that purpose, then you just become stale, and then you just wither away.
Right.
So if you have a purpose, even if it's family, you start becoming family oriented, and that's your purpose, then do the best family purpose you can do.
Right. Yeah.
And if you're dedicated to your job, some veterans have become police officers, and they take that skill that they learn to the police force.
Yeah, that's another good career. You know, it makes me want to maybe talk to a police officer, maybe a veteran who's a police officer. That could be insightful as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of police officers that are veterans, and they could see the transition kind of similar because it's almost paramilitary. Same with the fire department, because they have the rank structure is almost the same. You know, you got your police officers and your sergeants and lieutenants and captains, and you know, it's kind of mirrors in a way the military. Well, not totally, but so that's why it's kind of paramilitary. But it focuses on the same thing of like the brotherhood part,
the discipline,
the brotherhood, the I take care of my own kind of thing.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So they have, you know, that communal,
right.
You know, like where they become like, I'm gonna help my own kind of thing.
Right. Yeah.
So they get to double dip on.
Yeah, you know, you could be a retired police officer and a retired veteran.
Right.
That's interesting. And then, you know, that's a journey in and of itself. But you know, I think I want to do a part 2 with Julio, because like I said, he did 20 years of service. There's a lot to dive into. There's so many stories about his deployments. You know, even stories about whenever he was just in the U.S. on base, you know, that we could dive into. You know, you touched on something like mental health and you know, some of the things that veterans lean on to cope with things. That's another topic that we can talk about. You know, and if people could comment on what you would like, you know, some questions you have for Julio, and I'll put them on part 2 and we'll start talking about it. Yeah, this is a wrap for this video. Thank you, Julio, for
Thanks for the
video.
invite.
All right.